There are moments when life grows quiet in a way that feels intentional, as if heaven itself has leaned in closer. You may not be able to name what is changing, only that something within you is being rearranged. Old desires no longer satisfy. Old fears no longer control you the way they once did. You sense a gentle tension between where you have been and where you are going. And even though you cannot yet see the destination, your spirit knows it is being led. This is often how God begins His greatest work, not with noise or spectacle, but with a holy stirring that asks you to trust before you understand. When God is preparing you for something great, He often begins by unsettling what has become too familiar. The comfort you once clung to may start to feel restrictive, not because it was wrong, but because it is no longer enough. What once fit your life perfectly may suddenly feel too small for the person you are becoming. This discomfort is not punishment, it is invitation. Scripture reminds us that God is always at work beyond our limited sight, shaping outcomes that require growth before they can be held. As it is written, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord." Isaiah 55:8, KJV. When life begins to feel unfamiliar, it may be because God is inviting you into a larger way of living and believing. You may notice that God begins to strip away distractions during these seasons. Relationships that once consumed your attention may fade, not always dramatically, but quietly, as if they have fulfilled their purpose and gently stepped aside. Activities that once defined your identity may lose their shine. This pruning can feel lonely at first, and even confusing, but it is deeply intentional. Jesus spoke of this kind of divine preparation when He said that every branch that bears fruit is pruned so it may bear more fruit. God removes what divides your focus so your roots can grow deeper in Him. What feels like loss may actually be space being cleared for something far more meaningful to grow. Another sign God is preparing you for something great is the way He draws you into deeper stillness. Prayer becomes less about asking and more about listening. Silence, which once felt uncomfortable, begins to feel sacred. You may find yourself craving time alone with God, not out of obligation, but out of hunger. This is the soul learning to hear God's voice more clearly. In Scripture, God often spoke most powerfully in quiet moments, on mountains, in deserts, in the stillness of night. When your heart becomes more sensitive to His presence, it is because He is preparing to guide you in ways that require discernment and trust. During this preparation, you may also experience an unusual resistance. Progress feels slow. Doors you expected to open remain shut. Effort does not always yield immediate results. This can be discouraging if you interpret delay as denial, but God's timing is never careless. He is not withholding good from you. He is aligning you with it. The waiting season refines patience, humility, and faith, qualities necessary for carrying greater responsibility. Scripture reassures us, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven." Ecclesiastes 3:1, KJV. What God has prepared for you will arrive at the time when you are also prepared for it. You may also notice that your inner world begins to change before your outer circumstances do. Old wounds surface, not to overwhelm you, but to be healed. God often brings unresolved pain into the light before elevating a person, because unhealed wounds have a way of shaping decisions in harmful ways. This is the quiet mercy of God at work, inviting you to lay down burdens you were never meant to carry into the next chapter. Healing is not a detour from God's plan. It is part of the plan. When God prepares you for something great, He cares deeply about who you become, not just what you achieve. As this preparation unfolds, you may feel a stronger pull toward obedience in small things. Convictions become clearer. You sense when to speak and when to remain silent, when to move and when to wait. This is the shaping of spiritual maturity. God entrusts greater assignments to those who are faithful in hidden places. Scripture affirms this principle again and again, reminding us that faithfulness in what seems small is often the doorway to much more. These quiet acts of obedience are not unnoticed by God. They are building blocks for what is to come. There may also be moments when fear rises unexpectedly. The thought of change, even good change, can feel overwhelming. You may wonder if you are capable of what lies ahead. This, too, is part of the preparation. God often allows us to confront our fears so we can learn to rely on His strength rather than our own. When Moses was called, he doubted his ability to speak. When Gideon was chosen, he questioned his worth. When David was anointed, he was still tending sheep. God delights in using ordinary people for extraordinary purposes so that His power may be made known. What feels like weakness may actually be the very place where God's grace will shine most clearly. Another sign God is preparing you for something great is the way hope quietly begins to return, even before circumstances change. You may find yourself believing again, dreaming again, trusting again, sometimes without knowing why. This hope is not naive optimism. It is the Spirit of God reminding you that your story is still unfolding. Scripture tells us that God places eternity in the human heart, and with it, a longing for purpose. When that longing becomes stronger, it is often because God is drawing you closer to what He has already prepared. You may also notice an increased sensitivity to what is true and what is false. Things that once felt acceptable may now feel misaligned with your spirit. This discernment is not about judgment, it is about alignment. God is teaching you to recognize what belongs in your future and what does not. As your values become clearer, your path becomes steadier. This clarity is a gift, one that protects you from distractions that could pull you away from what God is building. As this season continues, you may not receive a detailed blueprint of what lies ahead. God rarely reveals the full picture at once. Instead, He invites you to walk by faith, step by step, trusting that each moment is leading somewhere meaningful. Scripture reminds us, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and He delighteth in His way." Psalm 37:23 KJV. Even when the road feels uncertain, your steps are not random. They are being guided with care. If you find yourself in a season where life feels both quiet and intense, where endings and beginnings seem to overlap, take heart. God often does His deepest work in these in-between spaces. What feels like waiting may actually be preparation. What feels like uncertainty may be alignment. What feels like loss may be clearing the way for abundance you cannot yet imagine. God is not careless with your life, nor is He slow to fulfill His promises. He is patient, intentional, and deeply invested in your becoming. When He prepares you for something great, He prepares your heart to recognize it, your character to sustain it, and your faith to trust Him through it. So if you sense that something is shifting, even if you cannot yet name it, rest in the assurance that God is at work. The same God who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it in His time and in His perfect way. And one day you will look back on this season, not with confusion, but with gratitude, and you will see that every quiet moment, every delayed answer, every gentle pruning was part of a loving preparation. God was not withholding from you. He was leading you toward something great.